What if I told you that the single most powerful predictor of long life, happiness, and even protection against memory decline isn't diet, exercise, or even money, but something much more surprising? Harvard researchers tracked adults for over 80 years and found one factor stood above everything else when it came to living not just longer, but better. My name is Dr. Howard Tucker. I've spent decades as a longevity doctor, guiding thousands of seniors through the confusing maze of aging. And today, I want to reveal the one thing that gave my own life deep meaning after retirement, and how science now proves it's the missing key to health and fulfillment in your later years. When I finally stepped away from my practice, I expected to feel relief. More time for family, more time to rest, more freedom to do all the things I had put off. But instead, something unsettling happened. The phone didn't ring as often, my calendar suddenly emptied, and despite decades of achievement, I found myself asking, what now? Many seniors experience this quiet moment of panic. Retirement, while a blessing, can feel like the loss of identity. It isn't the lack of work that unsettles us, it's the lack of purpose. Here's what science tells us. Purpose is not some fuzzy, inspirational concept, it's biology. Researchers at Rush University Medical Center followed more than 1,200 older adults for nearly a decade. They found that seniors who reported having a strong sense of purpose were 50% less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. Their brains physically aged slower. Why? Because purpose changes how the brain and body function. It lowers stress hormones like cortisol, it strengthens immune response, and it even improves sleep architecture. In fact, MRI scans show that people with a clear sense of meaning actually maintain thicker gray matter in brain regions tied to memory and decision-making. I discovered this firsthand. The first 6 months after I retired, my sleep was shallow, I felt restless, and my blood pressure began creeping up. Nothing changed in my diet or exercise, but one thing was missing. The moment I began volunteering at a local senior center, everything shifted. My mornings had structure again, but more importantly, my days had direction. I wasn't just filling time, I was adding value to someone else's life. That act, that sense of contribution, sparked a biochemical cascade. My sleep normalized, my mood stabilized, and my health markers began improving without a single new medication. This is why psychologists today call purpose a supernutrient for aging. Just like calcium strengthens bones and omega-3s protect the heart, purpose feeds the mind and spirit in ways that ripple through the body. A 2019 study published in JAMA Network Open analyzed data from nearly 7,000 seniors and found that those with high life purpose had dramatically lower risks of death from cardiovascular disease. Think about that. Meaning itself is protective, measurable, and life-saving. And here's the beauty. Purpose isn't tied to career or income. Some of my patients found it in teaching their grandchildren family recipes, others in joining a choir, leading a walking group, or even tending a small community garden. One woman told me that after retirement, she felt invisible until she started reading stories to children at her local library. Those children's smiles, she said, gave me back my life. Neurologically, this makes perfect sense. When we feel useful, the brain releases dopamine, the same chemical linked to motivation and reward. That dopamine release keeps neural circuits active, preventing the kind of decline that unchecked boredom accelerates. In fact, Japanese researchers studying ikigai, a word meaning reason for being, found that seniors who could clearly articulate their sense of meaning lived significantly longer and reported less depression and disability. For me, the lesson was crystal clear. Retirement didn't strip me of meaning. It invited me to redefine it. And that's where many seniors stumble. They think purpose must be grand, like starting a foundation or writing a book, but science shows even the smallest daily roles, feeding a pet, mentoring a neighbor, caring for plants, are enough to spark the same protective pathways. Purpose is scalable. It's not about size, it's about sincerity. So the one thing that gave my life meaning after retirement wasn't a new hobby or a financial windfall, or even more time with family. It was discovering that continuing to contribute, no matter how small the act, kept me alive in every sense of the word. And the moment you embrace that truth, your body and brain begin to respond in ways medicine alone could never achieve. One of the greatest misconceptions about aging is that the brain is like a machine wearing down, destined to run slower and eventually shut off. But neuroscience tells a different story. Our brains are plastic, meaning they adapt, rewire, and form new pathways at every stage of life. And one of the most powerful triggers for this rewiring is purpose. Let me explain. When you engage in something that feels meaningful, your brain activates the mesolimbic reward system. That's the network deep inside the brain that releases dopamine, the very same neurotransmitter that lights up when you fall in love or accomplish something you're proud of. Dopamine isn't just about feeling good. It's about motivation, focus, and resilience. It primes the brain to learn, adapt, and push forward, even in the face of obstacles. For seniors, this is critical, because as dopamine naturally declines with age, motivation often fades. That's why so many retirees describe feeling flat or numb. But here's the breakthrough. Purpose stimulates dopamine release, almost like flipping a switch back on. In fact, studies at the University of Michigan found that older adults with a strong sense of purpose not only reported higher life satisfaction, but showed healthier dopamine signaling on brain scans. Purpose literally keeps the brain's reward circuitry alive. And dopamine is just the beginning. Purpose also engages the prefrontal cortex, the region tied to decision-making, planning, and emotional regulation. When you feel you matter, your prefrontal cortex synchronizes more efficiently with the limbic system, the emotional center. That synchronization has a direct outcome: less anxiety, less depression, more emotional stability. One Japanese longevity study found that seniors with ikigai, a sense of meaning in daily life, had a 20% lower risk of developing depression, even when faced with illness or loss. Now let's talk resilience. Purpose increases the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Think of BDNF as fertilizer for the brain. It helps neurons grow stronger connections, keeps existing cells healthy, and even stimulates the birth of new brain cells. In one landmark study, seniors who engaged in purposeful activities like volunteering showed significantly higher BDNF levels compared to peers who were socially isolated. This isn't just theory, it's molecular reality. Purpose strengthens the very scaffolding of the brain.
But purpose doesn't stop at the brain. It cascades through the body. When the brain perceives meaning, it downregulates the stress response. Cortisol, the hormone that fuels chronic inflammation and accelerates aging, drops. Meanwhile, oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone, rises. Oxytocin is especially powerful for seniors because it promotes feelings of trust, reduces loneliness, and enhances cardiovascular health. This hormonal shift explains why seniors who engage in purposeful social roles, like mentoring, caregiving, or volunteering, often live years longer than those who don't.
Take the famous Harvard study of adult development. After tracking participants for decades, researchers concluded that meaning and connection were stronger predictors of healthy aging than cholesterol levels or even blood pressure. One of the study directors put it simply: happiness is love. Full stop. But beneath that poetry is biology. Meaningful roles activate brain chemistry that shields us from decline. I experienced this myself in a surprising way. During my early retirement, I began mentoring young medical students. At first, I thought I was simply passing on knowledge. But what struck me was how alive my own brain felt after those sessions. I'd come home energized, sharper, and oddly lighter, as if my stress had evaporated. When I looked into the science, it made perfect sense. Purpose had reactivated dopamine, boosted BDNF, and quieted cortisol. I wasn't just giving back. I was rewiring my own brain. And here's what's most inspiring. This rewiring doesn't require grand gestures. A 2021 study in the Journals of Gerontology showed that seniors who performed even small acts of purpose, like calling to check on a neighbor or helping a grandchild with homework, exhibited measurable improvements in cognitive function within weeks. The brain responds not to the scale of purpose, but to the sincerity of it. So, when we say purpose rewires the aging brain, we're not speaking metaphorically. We're talking about real, measurable changes. Higher dopamine, more BDNF, lower cortisol, stronger prefrontal limbic connections. These changes explain why seniors with a clear sense of meaning bounce back faster from setbacks, resist depression, and even show slower progression of diseases like Alzheimer's. Purpose is not just a philosophy, it's a prescription, and it's one the brain eagerly responds to, no matter your age. Purpose doesn't arrive as a lightning bolt. It grows, often in the small routines of daily living. Many seniors I've worked with tell me they expected their one big calling to suddenly reveal itself after retirement. But science and experience show that meaning is usually uncovered through small experiments, little steps that awaken parts of you that may have been dormant for years. The first step is curiosity. Ask yourself, what activities make me lose track of time? Research from Stanford University shows that when older adults engage in tasks that create flow, a state of deep engagement, the brain releases dopamine at levels similar to when we were younger. For some, this might be gardening, painting, or cooking. For others, it might be tutoring, singing, or organizing community events. The activity itself matters less than the way it draws you in. The second step is connection. Purpose flourishes in relationships. Seniors who volunteer or mentor often report that it's not the task itself, but the bonds formed that give their life meaning. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Aging and Health found that older adults who engaged in structured volunteering just 2 hours a week reported 40% higher life satisfaction scores within 6 months. That's not a subtle shift. It's a transformation fueled by connection. The third step is contribution. Purpose is discovered when we feel useful, when our actions matter to someone else. And this doesn't require extraordinary effort. One of my patients, a retired accountant, began helping local families with budgeting. Another, who always loved music, started leading a small sing-along group at her church. These roles not only brought joy to others but improved their own health markers: lower blood pressure, stronger memory, even better sleep quality. And here's the key: consistency. Purpose is like a muscle. The more often you flex it, the stronger it becomes. Neuroscience shows that repeated purposeful activity strengthens neural circuits, making the sense of meaning more automatic. What feels awkward at first, like joining a new group or reaching out to neighbors, becomes second nature with time. So if you're searching for purpose after retirement, don't wait for the grand answer. Plant the seed in your daily life. Explore curiosity. Build connection. Offer contribution. With each step, you'll feel the brain respond, the body relax, and life fill with the kind of meaning that medicine alone can never prescribe. One of the most inspiring parts of watching seniors rediscover purpose is how quickly the body and mind begin to respond. We often think transformation takes months or years, but the truth is, your system starts signaling change within weeks. The signs may be subtle at first, but they're unmistakable once you know what to look for. The very first sign is energy. I've seen patients who spent years dragging themselves through the day suddenly begin waking with more vitality. It's not because they started drinking more coffee or taking new supplements. It's because the brain, when engaged with meaning, releases dopamine and norepinephrine, the same chemicals that regulate alertness and drive. One study in psychological science showed that older adults who pursued purposeful activities reported a measurable increase in daily energy within just 10 days. It's like a spark has been relit. The second sign is sleep. Seniors often complain of restless nights, waking at 3 a.m. with their mind wandering. But once a sense of purpose is restored, the nervous system begins to calm. Cortisol, the stress hormone that disrupts sleep cycles, drops. At the same time, melatonin, the hormone that signals your body it's time to rest, regulates more smoothly. Patients who took on simple, purposeful roles, such as volunteering at a food pantry twice a week, reported not only falling asleep faster, but waking up feeling more refreshed. Their bodies were, quite literally, repairing more efficiently overnight. Another early sign is emotional resilience. Life doesn't suddenly become easier after retirement. Aches, losses, and challenges still come. But seniors with purpose report feeling less overwhelmed by setbacks. They bounce back faster. That's because meaning rebalances brain networks between the prefrontal cortex and limbic system, reducing the intensity of negative emotions. In practice, this shows up as greater patience, more optimism, and fewer feelings of helplessness. Many seniors tell me, "I feel steadier now, like I can handle things better." That steadiness is biology in action. You'll also notice sharper thinking. Purpose has been linked to better executive function, the brain's ability to plan, focus, and remember details. In fact, researchers at Northwestern University found that seniors with a clear sense of purpose performed 20% better on memory and attention tasks compared to those without it. Patients often tell me that they suddenly remember names more easily or can follow conversations with less effort. For families, this shift is profound. It feels as if their loved one has become more present, more engaged, more themselves. Physical health also begins to improve in ways you can feel. Blood pressure often stabilizes, aches feel lighter, and appetite normalizes. Part of this comes from lower inflammation. Purpose lowers levels of C-reactive protein, a key marker of chronic inflammation tied to arthritis, heart disease, and even dementia. Seniors often notice their morning stiffness easing or their walks becoming less tiring. These aren't coincidences. They're the body's way of saying, something is working. And perhaps the most powerful sign of all is joy. Not a fleeting mood, but a steady undercurrent of satisfaction that runs through the day. Seniors describe it as a quiet happiness, a reason to get up in the morning. This joy is not naive. It coexists with challenges, but it makes life feel worthwhile again. Harvard's 80-year adult development study calls this positive effect, and it is one of the strongest predictors of long-term health. So, if you've recently begun cultivating purpose after retirement, watch for these early signs: more energy, deeper sleep, steadier emotions, sharper thinking, stronger health, and quiet joy. They may arrive gently, but together they signal something profound. Your brain and body are aligning around meaning. And once that alignment begins, it sets off a chain reaction that builds momentum over time, carrying you into a future where age feels less like decline and more like renewal. Finding purpose is powerful, but sustaining it is what transforms a season of renewal into a lifestyle of vitality. The key is to make purpose as routine as brushing your teeth, small, consistent, and non-negotiable. The first step is scheduling it. Neuroscience shows that when purposeful activities are built into a routine, the brain begins to anticipate them, releasing dopamine even before you start. That anticipation becomes its own source of motivation. Whether it's volunteering at a set time each week, calling a grandchild every evening, or walking with a neighbor on Tuesdays, consistency matters more than intensity. The second step is variety. Purpose grows when it's nourished from different angles. A senior who only relies on one role, say, volunteering, can feel lost if circumstances change. But those who cultivate multiple outlets, like hobbies, mentoring, and family rituals, create a resilient web of meaning. This ensures that if one area shifts, others still anchor the spirit. The third step is reflection. Take 5 minutes at the end of the day to ask, where did I feel useful today? This practice strengthens neural pathways by highlighting the link between your actions and your sense of worth. Over time, this daily reflection makes purpose less dependent on external events and more internalized, something you carry no matter what the day holds. Finally, share it. Purpose magnifies when it's expressed out loud. Tell family members why a certain activity matters to you, or write it in a journal. Harvard researchers have shown that verbalizing gratitude and meaning enhances emotional well-being and cements the brain's reward circuits. Locking in purpose isn't about chasing big projects. It's about turning small, meaningful acts into reliable rituals. Do that, and your sense of direction won't just survive retirement. It will thrive for decades to come. When seniors commit to living with purpose, not occasionally, But as a daily practice, the benefits compound in ways that extend far beyond mood or memory. Over time, this single shift becomes one of the most powerful longevity strategies science has ever documented. Let's begin with the brain. Decades of research show that purposeful living slows cognitive decline. In one 10-year study at Rush University Medical Center, older adults with high purpose were nearly 40% less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. Even when brain scans revealed plaques and tangles, those with purpose still functioned better in daily life. It's as if meaning builds a neurological shield, creating resilience that allows the mind to keep working even under stress. The cardiovascular system also responds. Seniors who sustain purpose over years show healthier heart rhythms, lower blood pressure, and reduced risk of heart attacks. A Japanese cohort study tracking more than 43,000 adults found that people with a clear sense of ikigai, or reason for being, lived significantly longer, largely due to fewer deaths from cardiovascular disease. Purpose, it seems, doesn't just keep the brain young, it keeps the heart strong. Metabolism changes as well. Chronic stress often drives weight gain, inflammation, and insulin resistance, but daily purpose reduces cortisol, the stress hormone that fuels these issues. Longitudinal studies reveal that purposeful seniors maintain healthier body weights and better blood sugar control, lowering their risk of diabetes. Many patients of mine were surprised to discover that finding meaningful daily roles improved their lab results just as much as dietary adjustments. Then there's immunity. Purpose strengthens the body's defense system. Research from UCLA showed that seniors with strong life meaning had higher levels of natural killer cells, immune cells that protect against infections, and even cancer. Imagine that. By living with direction, your body literally trains itself to fight harder for your survival. But perhaps the most profound payoff is independence. Seniors who live with daily purpose maintain mobility and self-care abilities longer than their peers. They're less likely to experience falls, less likely to need assisted living, and far more likely to remain active in their communities. This independence is priceless. It's the difference between years of vitality versus years of decline. And let's not overlook happiness itself. Purpose produces what psychologists call sustainable well-being. Unlike pleasure, which fades quickly, meaning leaves a lasting imprint. Seniors with purpose wake up with enthusiasm, handle setbacks with grace, and report higher satisfaction even in the face of illness. This isn't denial. It's resilience born from knowing that life still matters. I've watched patients in their late 80s and 90s discover this truth. One man, after losing his wife, felt adrift until he began tutoring children in math. 10 years later, he still describes those afternoons as the reason he feels alive. Another patient, who struggled with arthritis, began leading a chair yoga group at her senior center. Her pain didn't vanish, but her outlook transformed. She often says, "Helping others move gave me back the joy of moving myself." That's the long-term payoff. Purpose doesn't erase life's challenges, but it transforms how you experience them. Instead of decline, you see growth. Instead of loneliness, you feel connection. Instead of fear of the future, you discover anticipation. Science now confirms what elders in every culture have whispered for centuries. That meaning is medicine. And unlike pills or procedures, it costs nothing, has no side effects, and only gets stronger the more you practice it. So, if you cultivate purpose daily, here's what you can expect years from now. A sharper mind, a stronger heart, steadier moods, resilient immunity, sustained independence, and above all, a deep sense that the later chapters of your life are not just worth living, they are worth celebrating. So here's what I've learned after decades as a longevity doctor, and what my own retirement journey proved beyond question. The one thing that gives life meaning doesn't come from money or titles or even perfect health. It comes from purpose. Purpose that rewires the brain, steadies the heart, strengthens the body, and brings joy into every single day. But here's the part most people never ask. If purpose is this powerful, then what else could it unlock? Could it actually extend the human lifespan in ways we've only begun to measure? Could it reshape entire communities of seniors into hubs of vitality rather than places of decline? Science is only starting to scratch the surface, and that's the question I'll leave you with today. If one small act of purpose can rewire your brain tonight, what might happen if you devoted the rest of your life to it?